Hi, my name's Isaiah. I go by Fractal Boi on Instagram. That's fractal.boi. Sweet.
Awesome. So, if you want to start just by talking like kind of like your general background in arts, like how you got into it, some of your inspiration. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I don't know, I guess I've been drawing and like my whole life. My parents always got me art supplies and stuff, but it never really became something that I felt like I was going to be doing for the rest of my life until somewhere around the middle of high school. But I really started getting dedicated to it near the beginning of high school. I actually started just by drawing like realistic eyes all over the place, and that was um, just one little thing that I could be proud of, or at least say that I could do like better than I guess like the average person. Um, and I remember a specific instance of my of like when I was like drawing eyes before I could do realistic eyes, and my brother was critiquing me. He's like, "Ah, it looks good, but the eyes don't look realistic," and that it's kind of like that was kind of annoying. But I realized that also like pushed me to like start my whole journey. Like being really dedicated to art. I just watched YouTube videos. Next thing I knew, I was watching videos on how to draw other features, and I pieced that together in my own way, and just love to have a different combination of sized features, or just yeah, changing different parts of the face can completely change the impression you get from the characters you make. And yeah, I don't know, it just started to unravel, and I saw the capabilities of it.
Yeah. Did you have any like big I don't know, particular artists that were inspiring to you just like in that early stage of getting into it?
Well, a lot of it was honestly like I had I mean, other than like big artists, like when I started creating, there was just like a lot of classmates and people that were at like a really similar level to me, and obviously like different because everyone has their own style. And I think that having like this friendly competition that doesn't like that wasn't like completely overshadowing like my skill level, but was like in leagues with it. It didn't completely discourage me, but it also like I felt like it was almost we were like racing to create the next best piece. So that was really helpful in my growth. But in terms of like big artists, as I started getting more into creating, people were like, "Ah, wow, this kind of reminds me of this, and this kind of reminds me of this," and I got really into like Hieronymus Bosch. Obviously he had incredible stuff. Was like on a completely another level, like with his time. Very mysterious artist. Like he created a lot of his own like unique like hot pink pigments and stuff that you really wouldn't see at the time, and a lot of these like um, just very like minute, just beautifully detailed little storylines going on. So you could like look at it for hours. And Salvador Dali is definitely a big influence. He just had a very like dreamlike, and I don't know. I call him like the father of surrealism. I think a lot of people do, but and there's like some evidence of like surreal thing. I'd say that Hieronymus Bosch is definitely really surreal, of course, but he had like a way of like just mixing these like completely like unassociated things together and making them cohesive, and that just stretches your brain's imagination trying to connect to the separate things. And then I really like a lot of Geiger's work. He had very like I don't know, just like the intricate structural designs that he had, and like like the repetition of like a lot of like the tentacle designs that he had, and like very much the flow of it. It's just extraordinary. And then there's a lot of like more modern artists that have been really aspiring to me too, that I like just follow on Instagram. Like I don't know if you know who Jonathan Salter is. You should definitely check him out if you haven't, because he does these insane, like really intricate, like glowing like kingdoms, like it. Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary stuff. Really good at painting light, and I reached out to him for some advice on getting out in the art world, and he was really like nice and modest, and was happy to like let me know his entire like a little synopsis of his journey, and or yeah he yeah really cool guy, and it just definitely like it humanized these people that I was like putting on pedestals, and showed me that it was like something that wasn't so far out of reach to um, yeah, of course, Alex Gray and a lot of like the visionary artists of contemporary era. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I do love how Instagram has been such a effective network for artists to just come together without too much ego and just be like, yeah, we're all here, and like we're all doing what we do, you know.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I'm curious, like, do you consider yourself a surrealist artist? And like, if so, what does that mean to you?
Um, I don't even really know what surrealism is. I think that's probably the point of surrealism, ironically, but I I don't know. Even like when I think of things like abstract art and surrealist art, I'd say that like mine probably falls under all those categories. When I think of surrealism, I think of or start with abstract. When I think of abstract art, I think of art that is kind of like just broken up, very geometrically, just picked apart, pieced together in different ways. Um, and then surrealist art is almost that same thing, but it has sentiment to it. And not that abstract art can't have sentiment, but I think that a lot of surrealist art seems to have a more like organic, almost alive feel to it. But there's it really is like a whole spectrum, and there's like a lot of overlap in between for every art piece. Certainly, my goal with creating is to try to always make it something new and entirely like in its own tier. But in doing that, it's actually just me um, like taking from all these different inspirations, and trying to just have the most different variables, like the most different like facial expressions of different emotion, trying to incorporate more different types of creatures, different size shapes, really just contrast in all these different variables, having like detailed and then a lot of smooth areas for the eyes to rest on. And it's this constant like just trying to like balance it out with these different aspects. But yeah, I guess you could say, I don't know, like I, I definitely want to. There's like a big collective of like artists, especially like visionary artists, and I don't necessarily know how I feel about like the term visionary art, because all art is visionary. Um, it's it's true. But I definitely am really inspired by a lot of the art that falls under that category, as it shows like a lot of uh, introspection, and just like these very like transcendental experiences, and it conveys them in like a really like hard to describe sort of way. But so in a way, I definitely want to be really connected with like that collective of artists and that group, because I feel like I can associate with trying to trying to like show a really, I don't know, I guess just trying to show the human experience and make it as in depth as possible in every facet of the mind that I can. But yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Something that I've been kind of looking into recently is just like, you know, art has always been super present in my life. I grew up like around artistic people in Vermont. It's hard to avoid them. Um,
Yeah.
and like specifically Bread and Puppet. I don't know if you've ever seen performances of the Bread and Puppet Circus in Glover, but just really using performing arts as like a way to you know, articulate oppression and to, you
Mm.
know, speak out, and as a, you know, way of social justice. And you know, I always thought like, so I've had this question recently, like with more abstract art, like how we can actually be more articulate in so many ways, you know, causing people to be more introspective and to be more you know, reflective, and instead of like, this is what you're supposed to see, and like kind of how do we like not create propaganda, basically, you know, when we're making art. um and yeah, that's kind of been a big question for me. I don't know if you have some thoughts on that, just like in terms of yeah.
To to clarify, so you're saying like as in propaganda, like the way people say that art should be seen is what you're talking on?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, that's a big reason that I'm so drawn to abstract art, because it's like, as a art maker and as a viewer, because like um, I like the freedom, like, and the intent of freedom of like being able to see whatever is there to you.
Yeah, yeah.
That it's very subjective, as all art I think is, but like I think abstract art just like articulates that more. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a I definitely think about that a lot too. Like there's I'm like always somewhere in the middle, you know. There's an element of it where it's like, yes, this is my creation. I'm trying to express my individual experience through this. So I want people to obviously be able to relate to me, but I've realized that the only way that they really can relate to me is by relating through their own means, you know, seeing the imagery that I describe and and then them seeing that and being like, wow, I think that I've, you know, because that's the closest we can really get to understanding is, you know, like assuming that we've shared this experience when we see this similar image in order to describe it. And yeah, so I never try to when there's like a I have a lot of things in my art and sometimes I forget about stuff that I put in there, and sometimes I see other things and I'm like, I can relate to that, but I don't remember putting that in there, and it might have just accidentally formed. um so yeah, when people look at my art and they're like, what's this, what's that, I try to not even really tell them if I intended anything, because I want them to be able to have a fully personal experience with it, because then that makes me feel like I've connected with them more. But
Totally. um I'm curious, this is gonna get a little meta here. Um but I'm curious, like how art, and particularly just like you engaging with art, whether that's like making a painting or however you engage with art, how has that um educated you or changed your perspective, just about things like identity and culture, and just ways of being in the world, basically, even more
yeah,
broadly. Yeah.
um, I mean, it's definitely changed a lot. Like here's the weird thing about being an artist, and especially like trying to, or for me, like being this really like specific kind of artist, it's like in trying to connect with people and reconnect my like humanity and like you know, like a lot of my art really does stem from uh like trauma and stuff, depression, like things I've needed to like almost like prove myself out of, like prove my worth with. Um, but then in creating that art, it also almost separated me from society a little bit more, because people see this art and they're like, wow, how'd you do that? And it's like, I saw all the steps to doing it. I was there through the whole journey. And for me, it doesn't seem like I can see how anybody can do it. It's not like, I honestly don't think that you're born with talent. You're born with a unique perspective on the world, and everyone is. But anybody can turn that into something incredible. And um, yeah, it's definitely in terms of physically, it's also changed the way that I look at the world. Like, I'm constantly looking at every moment as like an opportunity for another creation, or figuring out ways that I can like maximize creative potential by even just playing around with colors in a scene. Like I don't know if you've ever tried like this exercise where you just look at a scene and you're like, focus on all the blue, and then suddenly all the blue just seems to stand out, or focus on all the red, and then suddenly all that stands out. You can do that with many different things visually, and also with any sense you can break down in these really cool ways. You can also be like, look at all the 90-degree angles, and then suddenly your eyes will notice all the 90-degree lines, or even 45-degree lines. And I use that same process while I'm drawing, because I'll have a lot of these chaotic shapes, but the whole point is to find the pattern in them, find all those angles, highlight all those angles so you see the repetition, or highlight all those colors so they can come out as one shape. Um, uh, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely also, uh, I guess, culturally, I've I've just noticed um, that there's so much more to. There really is so much more to art than I ever like dreamed was possible. And there's not a limitation on it. The only limitation is the limitations you set yourself. I think that creating is it's like a defiance of the void. There's always this creeping feeling of like meaninglessness. I think everyone has to deal with that. It's this human aspect when we're stagnant and we're not moving, and we're not able to practice the things we enjoy or be around the things we enjoy. Um, so it very much, like, creating art isn't necessarily, it's as hard as it is easy. Like I create art when I'm going through a lot of pain. So it's hard in that way, but it's the easiest decision to make for me, because I know it's like the only option. Like, it's like, I need to make this because this is me proving my worth to myself. This is my purpose that I've defined for myself, and I need to keep watching it flourish. Um, yeah, I hope I answered that right. I kind of went on a little tangent, but
No, that's good. Tangents are what we want. Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of Terrence McKenna recently on just like opening the doors of creativity, and using psychedelics as a means to do that. And I know that you have experimented with that in your work. And I'm curious just to hear a bit of your experience with that, specifically just like how it's impacted your relationship with art, in general, just very, yeah, generally.
well, it's a tricky thing. I've definitely like, I don't know. I think that a lot of substances, it's a tricky dance. Um, and sometimes if I'm not like, I don't know, it's really just a dance with myself, I've realized. And then sometimes I just turn on myself, and then I'm fighting myself, where I'm going against like things that I've tried to stick to. For instance, I think that well, when I was like in high school, I was definitely experimenting a lot more, and I was doing it to such an extreme where it became like a really indulgent thing. Like I can't help it. I have like the worst addictive personality, and I always try to own that, just because, yeah, and it's like, yeah, and that really very much is a thing for a lot of artists because we have this deep desire to experience and feel all of the sensations because like that's what life's about. We want to feel it and all of its immensity. Like feel it to the extreme until we can't, and we realize like, wow, this is too much. And it gets us in these weird like ebb and flow cycles of like getting into these very depressive states and then being in these very manic states. And oh, anyways, back to in high school, I was messing around with a range of things from mushrooms. I accidentally smoked DMT in ninth grade. That was a funny little story, but yeah, it was just packed into a bowl of weed, and I wasn't really thinking much of it. But yeah, I ended up going. Um, yeah, I had like a really hard time like late into high school because I was indulging so much that I messed up my chemical imbalance, and I had this really intense episode that I can only really describe as a seizure. It did some really weird stuff in my brain. It made me feel like time had dilated or like time didn't exist. Like I was locked in this like skipping eternity of like hell, to be honest. And then I had this really just the strongest sensation of deja vu before it came on. Like I had known that this experience was eternal, and it terrified me. And when I came out of that, a lot of what I had been seeing and didn't go away. I was in like physical pain for a really long time after that. And I've done some research since, and I think that what happened to me is this thing called serotonin syndrome. And it's when you can have too much serotonin in your brain, and it can be lethal oftentimes, but it can cause nerve damage and all sorts of other problems. And these things called synapse misfirings, which feels like a little explosion in your brain. It's yeah. So honestly, that experience like made me feel really separate from everything because I kind of felt like I was going crazy, and it took me many months to like adjust to that new perception and realize that the way that I wasn't ever going to come back, and I just had to learn to cope with the way that I was experiencing things. And it was so intense. I was getting like heart palpitations, all sorts of other really unpleasant things, and you like couldn't sleep properly ever. And it like really messed up my classes in high school and made it so I couldn't focus. And it, yeah, it felt really tragic. It felt like I had just like thrown away a lot of my life, um, and I had no one to blame but myself, and I realized that, and I was like, you know what, I have three options. I weighed them out. I was like, either I can keep being crazy and be like, fix me, and like try to get help for that. Um, I, could potentially die like I felt like I was gonna die at the time, or I, and like, what does that matter? Like if I die, I die. I realized the bulk of um, the fear of death is thinking about death, not death itself. So I had come to terms with that because of experiencing this intense fear for so long. I realized that it eventually just became a silly thing that I was doing. Um, and then the other option was to really just not worry because this might be my last day on earth, and like do the things I want to do and create the things I want to create. And that was actually when I'd say that my art would took a very noticeable change. I started filling up entire pages. I had this feeling like this each page I filled up might be like the last um, sacrament to the world, or like the last evidence of my experiences. So I felt really strongly about conveying everything into each piece, putting all of my efforts into it. And also I learned a lot about I kind of I don't know if this is already a term, but I coined this term psychological alchemy, where it's like taking these sensations that we're feeling and converting them into their the other versions of themselves. For instance, this anxiety that I was feeling, this shaky feeling, I was being anxious about this anxiety. And I realized that if instead of being anxious or instead of being angry, I put on like a giant grin, because like that makes you like 10 times happier. They've like proven that. And open up my posture. If I felt like I was basically, I just stopped being ashamed of the way I was, you know. I'd start like being shaky. Instead of shaking, I'd like start dancing, and I'd stop shaking, you know. I would, yeah, put on a huge grin. I would put my chin up. I would be wacky, and I would be confidently wacky, you know. And I also like gained a new sense of compassion for everyone, because I realized that everyone is going through their own struggle, and too many people are so focused on their own struggles to notice that everyone's hurting. And I think that's what we need to do in order to help everybody feel better. And it comes right back around. Like as soon as I started acting that way, I noticed that people started being more concerned for me, and asking if I was okay and sharing compassion towards me. And I honestly can say that I would either be dead or in a mental institution right now if it wasn't for art and that realization. And yeah, it really did give me purpose and gave me a reason to be alive. And I definitely all the stronger for it. And also, you know, and there are times that I've definitely dabbled since then quite a bit, but even in the last like year or two, I've cut it down like quite a bit. Occasionally I'll like have a small mushroom dose just to get a little taste of things, but I'm definitely in control of the things I do now, and you know, I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I remember like vividly like meeting you at that party, and you were showing me your artwork, and you were like, this is on cocaine, this is on
Yeah,
acid, this is on, and I was just so fascinated by that. I mean, I know that like I'm very glad that you have come to a point where of stability, like mental health
yeah,
wise, and like that's yeah. um but I was just like, holy shit, like this is dedication to like an experiment, you know.
oh,
And for better or for worse, you know. But yeah, that was just like inspiring to see. And like also like I've been wanting to do like more sort of research just on like the history of that, like using um psychedelics for art making, like because that goes back you know,
absolutely.
way back. And that kind of brings me into the second part of that I want to talk about, which is just like art and spirituality. There's a one Terence McKenna quote that I love. The thin thread of shamanic descent into our profane world leads through the office of the artist. um, I love that. I feel
Yeah,
like, you know, art has always been very spiritual for me. Um, and then of course, like I think there's this kind of this interplay between like at least in my life, there's this interplay between spirituality, psychedelics, and art, all kind of being very informative tools of perception. Um, and I'm curious, just like yeah, what is art a spiritual practice for you? And how does, yeah, between those three sort of like spirituality and um, psychedelics and art, how, what does that interplay look like in your process?
yeah. So it's definitely spirituality is a huge aspect of creating my piece isn't. You know, it's it's such a hard thing to define. You know, I think that a lot of people think about spirituality and then they just think about like a bunch of like memes on social media and just things about like, you know, and it's really it's not as much like what you're seeing. It's this feeling that you get when you have a sacred moment, and it's really hard to describe unless you've experienced it yourself. And I mean, I think that everyone has. It's just a matter of identifying it, you know? Like nostalgia. When you get that feeling of nostalgia, I would consider that spirituality. When you can get that feeling of deja vu, I would consider that spirituality. When you have a strangely vivid dream, it's like, wow, that's vaguely familiar and I don't know why. That's also spirituality. And I think that the way that I like to define spirituality is any indication of something other than this narrative, you know, any indication of something deeper, you know, and I feel like we all know that there is something deeper, and that's the amazing thing is that there is something really incredible going on, and that's like almost undeniable, you know. We just don't know what it is. And yeah, when I create, there's often I will step back and I will like center myself and like just looking at the image that I've been working on for such a long amount of time, it becomes like the whole world. Like I zoom into it and I see these figures that I've made or whatever the centerpiece is, and I do get these emotions, whether that's a tricking of the neurons in my brain or not. You know, it's like it's this beautiful thing. It's almost like playing God a little bit. You know, you're taking you're taking this you're taking this blank canvas and you're conveying a narrative that you feel emotional towards just by looking at it. And yeah, and in that way, like when I like create an image, it, it just feels like suddenly you put a frame around it, or not like even a literal frame, but just by putting it in that canvas, it suddenly makes this thing sacred. You know, it's a really profound, um, strange experience. You're like almost like looking through a portal. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's weird indications of something higher that I'm like always getting, like weird synchronicities, this and that. And the more that I create and look for those connections in my artwork, the more I see those connections in the outside world, and that's almost evidence to me that what I'm doing is important. The more synchronicities I start noticing in my life, I'm like, wow, there's something here, you know.
This is I feel like in some ways you've already answered this question. I really liked what you said just about kind of going through that transition with using psychedelics more heavily and like kind of just like almost like a inner confrontation,
Yeah.
and like there's so I've just come across, like I've always been very confident with art, you know, having a very supportive artistic, you know, community that I grew up in. So many people I'm meeting now, you know, in college and really just everywhere, just have so much fear of identifying as an artist, of, you know, to engage with art, like it's something that's unreachable for anyone. And yeah, I'm curious, like, how have you overcome fear with art, through art, in art? Because yeah, that's something that I want to help people overcome. Like generally, I feel like that's like a duty that I have, is just like you can do it. Like, but yeah, I'm curious to hear your experience. But
Well, the thing with well, when I make a piece, it's almost I almost like never lay out a plan. You know what I mean? And I guess I create like I live life. You know, which you know I guess I you know if you ask people that know me, I live life pretty messily. I'm kind of a really chaotic dude, but I make it work. You know. I look for the connections and I see the opportunities, and I take everything one step at a time, you know? Like when I'm, anyways, that being said, when I often have fears with my own capabilities in art, you know, because it doesn't matter wherever you are in your stage of art, you're always going to see some artist or some creation, and you're going to be like, wow, that's beyond me. That's beyond me. But like, always just like try, as long as you're competing with yourself, you will always be working towards that, you know. I often will start a piece and I'm like, do I even know how to make art? I'm like, sometimes I'll like start a piece and I'm just like, you know, and it really does take a bit. I've been I had the amazing, like almost dreamlike opportunity to go to COSM, Alex Gray's Visionary Art Center, and I picked up this incredible book from their bookshop called, it was just it was like painting and visionary art, and something that really resonated in that book was this he's like the director of the Vienna College of Visionary Art or whatever, and he was saying how to actually get into the visionary state of mind when you're working on a piece, you need to be working on a piece for like anywhere from like 1 to 3 hours to like, there's like layers of that your brain goes through to like start comprehending and working with the dynamics of whatever medium you're working with, or even just, it's like when I start a piece, I feel like I'm almost like forcing it. I'm like, this I guess must go here, and that I can put that there until it gets to a almost almost like the canvas is telling me exactly where I need to put things. You know, it's like a lot of what my art is creating these abstract forms and then just bumping up the contrast in them, like taking the darker tones and making them darker, and taking the lighter tones and lightening them up, and it really like starts to bring depth into the piece. And the more you do that, the more structure you get, and then the more opportunity there is to do that on different layers, and then you start layering up all these crazily contrasted images, and really it's kind of just like a formula, you know, like there's an element of like trying to convey these very specific narratives, but really everything that you want to create you can already see. You know, it's just about looking into the chaos or looking into the static, like, you know, shapes in the clouds and whatnot. Another really big realization that I had in creating early on was that every single thing that we see, and I mean everything, our brain created. Like our perception of that thing, our perception of that beauty, our perception of fear, our perception of color, our perception of every single thing, our brain created based on our experiences that we've already had, and also experiences that are ingrained into our DNA. And knowing that, well, that right there is just a huge thing for fear. Like, you create the fear. That fear is you. You're scared of yourself. You create the beauty. Any beauty you've ever seen, you created. Therefore, you can recreate it. It's just a matter of finding a blank sheet or a blank canvas or a surface for your brain to play around on in order to bring those images out and redefine them. I think that it's hard for a lot of people to create art because they don't have a willingness to believe that they're capable of that. It's just a matter of, you just got to look really hard and you just got to like try to see it. It's not always clear. It's sometimes like kind of vague, but if you define that vagueness, it becomes a little more clear and a little less vague the next time you look at that spot. And then you just keep doing that until the image starts to just pull out and be, yeah. And you know, like it's really hard, you know, and it's to communicate these things, especially like the more I've progressed as an artist, like the harder it is for people to believe me when I say it. They're like, oh, easy for you to say, and I'm like, look, it really is that, like, that's what I told myself, like, and I'm like, I have still a long way to go, I have like big aspirations for like the level of excellence, but that's all you need to have. You need to be able to believe that you're capable of incredible things, and know that your experiences are something of unique beauty and worth sharing with the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said that, because
Mm.
that's also how I feel very strongly about, art is just like, and maybe that's also like a contribution to the fear, is just like art is very uncertain, very chaotic, because people like to think that things are, static, or that we're in control, that we need like clear cut answers for the questions that we have. And art has been such a great thing for me, studying political science as well, because it's like, um, it kind of teaches you like how dynamic things are in life and how chaotic things are, just like everything else. And so that's been, and I think also, like, we also define, like, we create value in our heads too, and that's also in our DNA and our culture, and like you were saying. And I think that's also where a lot of fear comes in, is like, um, my art isn't good, right? It's not like, I might think it's good, maybe my friends think it's good, but it's not objectively good. um, and this is where, like, I don't really believe in objectivity in general, like especially not in art though. um, and yeah, I don't know, like, but then there is, like you were saying, like, and even still, like, there's visionary art, right, and there's like high art. um and I'm just curious, like, do you believe that art is fully subjective, in the person that sees it, or the person that makes it, or is there like an objective quality in art that we need to work towards, um, to improve ourselves? um, and like
Um.
I Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I get what you're saying. I think that it's really tricky. I think that there's the underlying structure is subjective, but I think that the way that we see I think the underlying structure is objective, but I think that the way that we see the structure is subjective. Really everything's kind of just shapes. Everything's just shapes and energy moving around. And the human mind is what gives it the emotional qualities. And so I think that every person that sees those shapes will see different things and break it down in their own ways. Um, but I think that, but yeah, I think that the imagery or the shapes themselves are all subjective, but or sorry, objective, might be. Um, but yeah, that's my quick take on that.
It's been kind of this like existential crisis for me,
Mm.
as an artist and a student, right? I It's like, how do you teach art,
Yeah.
and this is where I like clash a lot with art teachers throughout my life, like in high school and today, where especially when a teacher says to a student, like, you're not trying hard enough, like you're not putting your all in it. And it's like, who the fuck are we to say?
I
We're not
know.
them, we're not experiencing their process. Because I think this is where, like, I get really frustrated with art, like particularly in the Western world, where it's like all about the product and the
Mm.
result, and it has nothing to do with what the process is for that artist. Because yeah, I mean, to me, it's like the process is everything. I mean, the process doesn't end. I have this one of my teachers I love. She says the finished product is a lie. Which is like, yes, I feel that in all of my work. And yeah, so I don't know. I really like getting people's different inputs on that. Because
Yeah, to actually, you made me think of something. If you don't like necessarily break down art and all like the technical aspects of how to create like a balanced piece, or even the way that lighting works, if you like aren't completely in tune with that, you might be more in tune with the emotional aspects. Like the thing is, like the mystery of art is the magic. You know, that's what makes it so beautiful, is because you're not thinking about all those tiny little aspects of, you know, that you, and in order to be an artist, you kind of have to sacrifice some of that beauty for yourself in order to create beauty. You need to break it down, and you need to be able to be like, okay, how can I see this landscape as if it's just made out of paint? You know, you're taking this amazing, like, extraordinary thing, and you're kind of just breaking it down into this simple medium, um, which you know, like, that's kind of the sacrifice artists have to make. But I think that there's also this balance that you have to strike within in order to keep integrity as an artist that can have, um, that can convey a lot of deep emotions through your work. Is like, you need to be able to still be connected to that childlike sense of magic and wonder, and be able to also see that painting as if it's a beautiful landscape, and not just, you know what I mean? So keeping both sides intact, I think, is a really important, part of being an extraordinary artist. You know, because yeah, sometimes you can just break things down too much and make them, but you know, there's beauty in all sorts of art, you know, like even architectural designs and stuff. That's very much just very strategic, thinking about angles, all that. It's incredible, you know, really profound stuff. But emotional, you know, I guess that can be argued, you know, depending on who's looking at it.
Yeah, I guess I would just, this isn't really a question, but I would just say, like, in my experience recently, I've discovered how art is highly academic. You know,
Right.
I felt this real detachment as an artist from the world of logic and science and more structured, like, fields of research that are maybe presumably less uncertain. Um, than art, less mysterious. Um, but I found that art can be, you know, like I was saying with political science, and, you know, um, how it can be such a great framework to do other things
Yeah,
because you have this sort of very dynamic understanding of the world through art, which then I think gives you a really good sense of whatever it is you want to do with that. And it's not that, and I think we, you know, it gets a little dangerous when we talk about this, how we assign art to roles like art for activism, art for therapy.
mhm.
And yes, it is all of these things, but it has to be all of them and not just one of them. I think, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
that's been something I've discovered recently, is like the way we attach art to things, and how that can be beneficial or harmful, especially in like liberal arts schools. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting how like when we attach art to things too, it also, it can change the quality of our art, or at least the way that people see the quality of our art. And like for instance, I would never make political art. Not that I don't have opinions, you know what I mean? But like for me, like art has always been something like really deeply personal, and something almost something almost um I don't know, something that's supposed to like kind of, or I'm trying to create something that's beyond like a societal, like, I don't know, so societal structures that are beyond like just human emotion. You know, I try to be like really raw with it, whatever I'm creating, and attaching it to everything that's like raw and powerful. Like if I can, it's very personal. I try to like help people on an individual basis. Like I've definitely like thought about like art therapy and stuff like that, because it was therapy for me. And I mean, I create in order to try to help other people connect or see what's possible. And yeah, I don't ever like to, define myself as the one thing. It really, it very much, if you're an artist, you know, like you're an artist in everything you do. You're an artist in the way you walk, the way you see the world, the way you listen to music. It the it carries over with everything, you know what I mean? um, um I believe it's condensing all actions to one. uh, I probably said that wrong or something like that, but the way that I perceived it from my memory is, the everything essentially is just being done as you know, as your unique flavor of person, or everything you have to bring to the world. You do it all in your own style. You perceive the world in all your own style, and therefore everything is your art piece. And we're all co-collaborating on this art piece.
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot about just like I don't know, trauma and art, and like that's something that, you know, since I was pretty young, you know, I lived quite a carefree life. You know, just didn't really struggle with anything traumatic until I was, you know, a teenager. But up until that point, I was kind of desiring trauma um, to improve my art, which is
Yeah.
fucked up. I mean, it's, I don't know. I have since looked back at that and been like, and seen ways how maybe that it may have actually improved my art to have that mindset, and not at all. Um, but yeah, I think that and there is kind of this like romanticized, perpetuated idea of like great artists being um survivors, you know, that they've lived through brutality in order to get where they are with their art. And I am not sure if I believe that, but I do feel that like what I went through did change my art significantly and made it more provocative. I think my art was always pretty provocative, but it was kind of like louder during a time of turmoil. And like yeah, I'm curious, just sort of like yeah, just like provocation in art and healing. Like, is that, do you feel like that's necessary for you to be heard? Do you need provocation in your work? Um, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't, there's this definitely like, um I don't know what it is. Trauma follows me. I can't escape it. It seems like it almost happens like very cyclically. Cyclically, is that a word? You know what I mean? In a cyclical manner. Um, and and I can, I definitely identify with the feeling of like almost wanting to seek trauma out. It's this feeling like, it's this feeling like you want something in your life to happen. It's when I go through this depression, this very deep depression, that I usually am wanting to be confronted by trauma, or almost not even necessarily confronted by trauma. A lot of it is sort of like this very self-inflicted anger. It's this feeling like worthlessness, and wanting to be identified, or at least recognized for the pain that I've been experiencing. Um, and then I go through the same like cycles of like feeling ashamed for feeling that way, and then getting depressed again, and then just really not knowing like how I should feel or what's actually going on. Um, and yeah, that's usually when I make my best work, because it's after like a while of feeling this way that I there's like something inside me. It's almost like I don't know. It's almost like this core of like maturity, you know, that is like you need to like get your shit together, you know. It like comes out of me, and it when I start creating, um it like I don't, it makes my brain completely clear. And when I start on a piece, it's like, this is my purpose. I need to do something incredible. I need to show how I'm feeling, and I need to show it in a productive manner that can help other people, and that can show people what's possible, and show myself what's possible, to prove to myself that feeling this way isn't worth it. But yeah, so I think it is a necessary thing. Um, these days, I kind of just let it. I let it happen when it happens. You know what I mean? I feel like I think that that's the biggest thing with trauma and pain and depression, is feeling ashamed about feeling that way. That's largely the cause of it, if not the just the prolonging of it. So when I get depressed, I allow myself to be depressed for a little bit, you know, and I reach out to the people that I need to, and you know, and they're always really supportive. And then when I get angry, I allow myself to be angry, as long as it's productive. I do that, you know, like mental alchemy I was talking about. You know, it's like if I'm angry, I need to be riled up. I need to be hyped for. I need to be like, I'm gonna do this, like, yeah, you know, like it's raring to go, like, you know. And it's
Yeah, you're not suppressing it. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And letting it out, and letting it out in the proper ways, I think is also how you make incredible art, you know? Like, because the truth is, there's only really two options when we feel that way. Either it makes or breaks us, you know? And breaking is not an option, you know? So you gotta
Totally.
create.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah, I think also just like my influence with that, you know, desiring trauma for art is like, I've always been super drawn to darkness in art, you know, just like, some of my favorite filmmakers are David Lynch,
Mhm.
and you know, Alejandro Jodorowsky, people that use very abstract, um, dark surrealism
Yeah.
to express themselves. And yeah, that's always been like a big inspiration to me. And like I'm kind of getting back into it. I kind of felt like I need to stop doing this because it was a little unhealthy, you know, just like the amount of art I was exposing myself to that was like that level of disturbing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like gotta, you know, take a break, and you know, be
Mhm.
everything in moderation, right?
Of
But
course,
it's
of
like
course.
but yeah, I am coming back to that again, and realizing like the need for provocation in my art.
Mhm.
um, and I think, you know, again, like that's where it's interesting to think about art becoming uh, propaganda, because it's like, yes, this is like my opinion, but I don't want to like, you know, impose it on you through provocation. Like, um, I want to be mindful of that, you know, in my work, especially with things like acting, and you know, where people are hearing your voice.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important to just like keep in mind, to like keep yourself in check as an artist, that like you actually have a lot of power over people. I mean, people might not, yeah, people will hear you in so many different ways. And I think that that's a powerful tool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another really interesting thing I've recently come to realize with art is, I mean, I don't know, a lot of these things I know, but I just phrase it in a different way, and then it almost feels like a new idea. Um, but when we create an art piece, it's a way to communicate with people. Like most of communication with people want to almost like be defiant, or feel like they're separate, so they want to have like an opposing viewpoint and this and that. Art is one of those things where you can't argue, you can't really argue with it. I mean, unless there's like some political art that's saying like a very specific thing. In art that can be interpreted in so many different ways, you can't argue with it. Like, the emotions you feel from it are self-evident. You feel it, it's the truth, that's it, and that's another incredible thing about it, is you can communicate with people or influence people in a way without any opposition. But that's also, as you were saying, where it's got some responsibility behind it, like you can really influence people in dark ways or in positive ways. And that's why I try to cover a little bit of all of the emotional sides of life, to show people that it's human to have these experiences. You're not crazy for feeling this way or having these dark thoughts, but also there is this reality of the light and the salvation from that darkness. Um, and yeah, what you're saying with delving into like dark art, and in order to kind of like connect with that side of yourself, that is really important. Sometimes I'll listen to music that really just like makes me fucking sad. Makes me really sad, but it's so beautiful that I just, I have to. But then there's times when it's weird. It's almost like sometimes I'll play music that I know that I like, but just in that moment it just does not work. Like I try to play upbeat music sometimes when I'm feeling like down or depressed, and then it's almost too abrasive and overwhelming, and kind of it feels like artificial because of the state of mind that I'm in at the time. And then sometimes I try to play sad music when I'm feeling that way, and then I'm like, oh no, it's driving me deeper into that, and I feel worse. Uh, and then I just play some chill indie music, and I'm good. It's something in the middle. Um, but but yeah, like it really it also goes to show that art is not just subjective, but it's also subjective based on where the subject is in their life, and what what's going on with them, or what's going on even just around them in the room, yeah.
There's an Alex Gray quote that I really like from one of his TED Talks. The great uplifting of humanity beyond its self-destruction is the redemptive mission of art.
I like that a lot.
Which I love, as like art just being like a big like catharsis for like humanity almost, like and I don't know, like you could take that so many different ways. Like I take it very literally because I've been studying a lot of how art is transformative in societies, politically, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just curious, like how you feel like art can evolve people to be more open-minded, and that in turn could make civilization more democratic.
I think that um, it's really important for artists to be able to like share what they do and like show that it's not something that's so out of reach, or like um I don't know. I mean, like creating art is very much like a process of the ego, obviously. You're showing your very unique experience. There's a lot of uh like people think ego, and they think that, oh, ego's bad. We need ego in order to survive, in order to express our opinions, or really, do anything. but but in terms of I think that it's dangerous when artists get this feeling of superiority, you know what I mean? Because it's something that creating incredible art is something that anyone's capable of. I think that the sharing the knowledge of art, and showing that we're all showing what every human can be capable of, um, is like a huge contribution to society. And I think that if artists can and have the time to, then more artists should mentor, or even if they even just like here and there, like just trying to like be more inclusive, I guess you could say. Um, yeah. And I think that also does a lot for the artist as well, because um, being able to connect with other people and being able to take everybody's experience as their truth um, allows us to absorb a lot more and learn a lot more and have a broader perspective for our own creation.
I have one more question, and it's just like very open. What do you hope to see for the future of art and for artists? Whether that's like in your own life or like just throughout the world.
I guess I'll start in my own life. I I hope to be collaborating with a lot more artists. I hope to be able to, you know, start like monetizing my art more and feel like people can contribute the value that I put into it for the artwork. But I also know like how hard it is to, like live in this capitalist society and not really have like the means to buy things that aren't something that you can like use physically or that you can, yeah. Um, yeah, so I've, been thinking about getting more into like uh, clothing design and stuff like that, because people love to be able to like stylize, and that's a way that people can connect with art and use it. But yeah, honestly, I want to be able to get to a point where I can create and have people appreciate the art for purely what it is, the the imagery, and not like something to like sell some product. Yeah, in terms of everyone or every artists around the world and just the whole art scene around the world, I hope it doesn't become like a really like perverted idea of just of like art being this thing that isn't actually doesn't have any actual emotion or quality to it, that kind of like degrades like the whole idea of self-expression. Like I mean, I think you know the kind of like art that like I mean it's kind of weird. Like there's something to be said about everything. There's a statement or some sort of emotional value behind everything, even duct taping a banana to a wall. You heard about that story, right? Yeah, of course, that was a huge thing. Um, I guess it could be argued that that's got um, some level of, it affected a lot of people. It made people think, it was thought provoking in some ways, and made people even maybe, um, you know, I don't know. I just hope that a lot of people that have struggled a lot to create their art get recognized, even on just a personal level, recognized for their experiences. Um, and I definitely want to, yeah, I just want to really share my art with the world and learn from other people's experiences and, just experience the depth that the world has to offer. Really all that anyone could ever want.
Totally.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's all the questions I have. Do you have any like last thoughts or anything you want to share?
Um, yeah, I guess just to kind of um, rephrase like or condense everything that I've been saying. I think that anyone that wants to create, they can. They're completely capable of it. It's just you have to be asking yourself like, why do you want to create, and how much do you want to be able to actually create? Because you have to fuel that drive into whatever you're doing, and then you're capable of anything. It's about concentrating your purpose, being like this is this feeling, being like if you feel the need to prove your emotions enough, then you can. It's just about knowing that can be an outlet for it, and you can do incredible things. And on an existential thought, like just don't overthink everything, just or anything actually. Just kind of take things one step at a time, as my grandfather always told me. And yeah, appreciate the simple things and just be in the moment. And creating will never be a stressful endeavor.